Imagine standing at the pinnacle of your acting career, finally receiving recognition for the bold, unforgettable characters you've portrayed, feeling the electric thrill of Hollywood stardom, only to watch your body fall into a frightening decline, your hair inexplicably falling out, your eyes blurring to near blindness, and your entire body swelling as though under siege by some unknown force. This was exactly the horrific reality faced by African-American actress Pam Grier, a performer who had defined a generation of strong on-screen heroines before her health threatened to undermine everything she had worked so hard to achieve. Yet the question remains, how did she manage to overcome this uncanny, life-threatening illness and then continue to press forward, ultimately returning to reclaim a place of prominence on screen? Hers is a story not only of cinematic triumph, but of tenacity, resilience, and a refusal to bow to adversity. Born Pamela Suzette Grier on May 26, 1949 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, she was the daughter of a nurse and an Air Force technical sergeant. She came from a family background as diverse as the many roles she would play later in her life. Her ancestry included Hispanic, African American, Filipino, Chinese, and Cheyenne heritage, shaping her sense of identity in a formative way that would have significant repercussions for how she was viewed and how she viewed herself in the entertainment industry. Because her father was in the military, her family relocated frequently, traveling not just across the United States, but also overseas to England. These early itinerant experiences exposed her to an array of cultures, historical settings, and societal norms, giving her an innate sense of adaptability that she would find useful in her career. Eventually, her family settled in Denver, Colorado, where she attended East High School. While she was there, she spent time competing in beauty pageants, not necessarily as a reflection of personal vanity, but rather as a strategic move. Winning or placing in these contests helped her earn money for her college tuition at Metropolitan State College, where she hoped to refine her skills and figure out her future path. Yet Pam Grier's early life was not the glamorous dream that many might assume. She was bullied, sometimes severely, due to her mixed race. In those days, the climate of social tensions in the United States made her an easy target for prejudice, snide remarks, and even more unsettling intrusions. She later revealed the disturbing fact that she was sometimes forced to do things she vehemently did not want to do, all for men's pleasure, an experience that profoundly shaped her sense of self and her commitment to playing strong, independent women on screen. The era, after all, was one in which many women, and particularly women of color, were grappling with the dual obstacles of sexism and racism, and Pam's experiences gave her an urgent desire to provide a fearless, empowered image of Black womanhood in film. In 1967, she moved to Los Angeles, California, armed with grit and hope. She found a job working the switchboard at American International Pictures, AIP, a decision that initially didn't seem especially momentous, but would eventually lead her to a breakout career. At that time, AIP was known for low-budget genre films that often featured sensational subjects designed to pack drive-in theaters. Director Jack Hill discovered her early on, recognizing a mesmerizing quality in Grier that set her apart from other aspiring actresses. Hill cast her in a series of women in prison films such as The Big Dollhouse and The Big Birdcage. Although these roles might sound like obscure exploitation flicks to modern ears, they were, for their time, vehicles that allowed Pam to project a distinctive power and authenticity that galvanized audiences. She was brave, physically commanding, and unabashedly fierce, a combination that had not often been seen in African American actresses in action roles. Soon enough, she earned a level of attention that both validated her talent and opened new doors. Throughout the early 1970s, Grier became a star in the burgeoning Blaxploitation genre, which was a wave of films featuring predominantly black casts, often capitalizing on the civil rights movement's call for more racially inclusive media. These films, such as Coffy, Foxy Brown, and Sheba Baby, featured gritty urban settings, revenge-driven storylines, and protagonists who were unafraid to challenge corrupt establishments. What set Pam apart was the fact that she was the first African-American woman to headline an action film, effectively taking a place historically occupied by men. Her characters were unapologetically bold, asserting their independence and demanding respect in ways that mainstream Hollywood had rarely witnessed from black female characters. In an era marked by the aftershocks of the civil rights movement, changing perspectives on women's liberation, and the fractious politics around race, Pam Grier's powerful presence on screen had a resonance that went beyond mere cinematic entertainment. Critics and audiences alike recognized that something genuinely transformative was happening. The famed film critic Roger Ebert, reviewing The Big Bird Cage, was impressed by Grier's ability to combine raw physicality with authentic acting, describing her as having a remarkably beautiful face, an astonishing physique, and a kind of genuine, unfiltered magnetism that other actresses often seem to lack. This was not just about her appearance. It was about an energy that read instantly on screen. Yet despite her successful run, Blaxploitation as a genre began to fade toward the end of the 1970s, partly due to shifting tastes and partly because of criticism from various civil rights organizations that argued the genre promulgated stereotypes. As these films started to vanish, Pam Grier found herself appearing in smaller supporting roles, a phenomenon that often happens to performers heavily associated with a particular style of film once that style falls out of fashion. Before that downturn, she'd starred in Women in Cages and The Big Dollhouse, both of which were filmed in the Philippines in 1971. While shooting these movies, she contracted a deadly tropical disease that nearly killed her. The symptoms were intense. Her hair began to fall out, her body swelled up, and for nearly a month she was partially blind, unable to see the world around her. Astonishingly, it took nearly an entire year for her to recover. Many might have chosen to walk away from the relentless pressures of show business after such a trauma, but Pam Grier chose to keep going. After her recovery, she made the decision to further her education, enrolling at UCLA in pursuit of continuing her intellectual growth. She also explored music, briefly singing backup for singer-composer Bobby Womack. Intriguingly, Womack's composition Across 110th Street would eventually become the theme song to the film Jackie Brown in 1997, further linking their creative paths in a moment of cinematic resurrection for Pam. Her comeback in the 1990s was indeed anchored by Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, a film that functioned as both homage to her 1970s legacy and as a fully realized cinematic statement in its own right. Cast in the titular role, Pam Grier delivered a performance that was widely lauded by critics, receiving a Golden Globe nomination and an NAACP Image Award nod. Tarantino, an avowed devotee of 1970s genre films, sought to channel Pam's iconic persona from Coffy and Foxy Brown. Jackie Brown effectively reignited her career, reminding both Hollywood insiders and audiences that her presence was just as captivating as ever. The storyline centered on Jackie, a middle-aged flight attendant ensnared in a money-smuggling scheme, battling crooked associates on all sides. With her subtle emotional range and the same formidable spirit she had displayed in her youth, Grier infused the film with a sense of authenticity and complexity. Overnight, new generations of filmgoers were made aware of the cinematic powerhouse that was Pam Grier, prompting renewed interest in her earlier work and establishing her once more as a household name. Tracing back a bit, we can see how her filmography formed a complicated tapestry. In the 1980s, after the decline of Blaxploitation, Grier had decided to broaden her range by taking on smaller character roles. In the 1981 film Fort Apache, The Bronx, starring Paul Newman, she played a drug-addicted sex worker, once again pushing the envelope with a portrayal that aimed to reveal the underbelly of urban life. Though the part was not large, it was memorable and showed her willingness to tackle challenging roles. She then explored theater, making her stage debut in 1985 in Sam Shepard's play School for Love at the Los Angeles Theater Center. Theater offered her a fresh medium for expression, allowing a new discipline that was distinct from the rapid-fire world of low-budget 1970s movies. By the mid to late 1980s, she had also landed a recurring role on the popular television series Miami Vice, playing an associate of Detective Tubbs in a recurring storyline that spanned from 1985 to 1989. Miami Vice, known for its pastel suits, synth-driven music, and atmospheric depiction of the drug scene in Miami, gave Pam a broader audience in a mainstream TV environment. She further built her television resume with guest appearances on sitcoms like Martin, Night Court, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, each time bringing a distinctive presence that quietly reminded viewers of her starring film roles. She also managed to fit in a recurring role on Crime Story between 1986 and 1988, further deepening her engagement with the world of episodic TV. One of the most unfortunate professional setbacks in this period occurred when she was cast in the film Rocket Gibraltar. The movie's director, Daniel Petrie, became anxious about potential public backlash to scenes involving an interracial romance. As a result, Pam's role was dramatically trimmed. The incident underscored the persistent cultural fears and prejudices that still shaped Hollywood decision-making, particularly concerning interracial relationships on screen. But Grier didn't let this discourage her. She continued booking roles in shows like Sinbad, Preston Chronicles, The Cosby Show, The Wayans Brothers Show, and even a memorable appearance on Mad TV. She was able to transition fluidly among comedic skits, dramatic arcs, and cameo appearances, demonstrating a versatile skill set that didn't limit her to any single type of character. In 1994, she made an appearance in Snoop Dogg's music video Doggy Dog World, bridging multiple entertainment genres, from the cinematic portrayals of the 1970s to the distinctive hip-hop scene of the 1990s. Not long after, she joined the cast of the Showtime series Lynx, produced by Tim Reed. That role further cemented her small-screen success. Around that same time frame, Grier took a role in John Carpenter's Escape from L.A., 1996, playing Hershey Las Palmas, a character who was trans and lived in a dystopian future. Although Escape from L.A. was overshadowed by Carpenter's earlier classic Escape from New York, it continued Pam's trajectory of working with directors who valued her ability to inhabit offbeat, audacious characters. Then came Jackie Brown, 1997, Quentin Tarantino's meticulously crafted love letter to 1970s cinema, featuring the iconic soundtrack that included Bobby Womack's Across 110th Street. The film brought Pam Grier the recognition that had so long seemed elusive. She was no longer just the blaxploitation queen, but a seasoned actress stepping confidently into a new era of complex storytelling. Critics praised her for presenting Jackie as a woman caught between desperation and resolve. This role demonstrated, in a nuanced way, that Pam had the ability to show emotional vulnerabilities while still embodying strength. She was recognized with nominations for a Golden Globe, for the Screen Actors Guild, and for an NAACP Image Award, validating her place among Hollywood's upper echelon. Shortly thereafter, she accepted a role in the Showtime series The L Word, portraying Kit Porter, the half-sister of Bette Porter, Jennifer Beals. Airing from 2004 to 2009, The L Word was groundbreaking in its frank portrayal of the lives, loves, and dramas of a group of primarily lesbian and bisexual women living in Los Angeles. The role of Kit Porter as a talented singer who struggled with issues of addiction and relationships expanded Pam Grier's fan base yet again. Her portrayal connected deeply, especially with audiences who resonated with the show's portrayal of marginalized communities seeking acceptance and love. And for any fans who might have fallen for her earlier performances in Foxy Brown or Coffy, seeing her in a completely different context was more evidence of her enduring versatility. While all this professional evolution was occurring, Grier confronted personal challenges on a scale that might have broken someone of lesser fortitude. Her sister tragically died of cancer in 1990, and that alone was a devastating blow. The heartbreak deepened even further when her nephew, her sister's son, died by suicide, overwhelmed by his mother's illness. Pam mourned these losses profoundly, burdened by guilt that she hadn't been able to protect her nephew or alleviate his despair. At the same time, she fought her own health battle. In 1988, she had been diagnosed with cancer and was told that she had only 18 months to live. This dire prognosis was like a thunderbolt. It forced her to reckon not only with her mortality, but also with how she wanted to spend her remaining time. Miraculously, she survived, once more proving her extraordinary resolve against the harshest adversity. She continues to credit her survival to a combination of faith, modern medicine, a sense of optimism, and her belief in embracing life's challenges as hidden gifts. Remarkably, Pam Grier has never been married, though her romantic life has been anything but obscure. She had a famous relationship with comedian Richard Pryor, a man of enormous talent whose own personal demons with addiction and emotional turmoil were widely documented. Their relationship, by her own accounts, was both loving and tumultuous. She was also romantically linked with basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, another towering figure in African-American popular culture. Over the years, Grier has maintained an intensely private perspective on many aspects of her personal life, preferring to keep her focus on work and family. And that seems in character for a woman who was forced at an early age to guard herself against those who wanted to exploit or mistreat her. Her resilience and the sense of philosophy she developed over the course of her life were once summarized beautifully in her reflections on adversity. She regards adversity not as a misfortune, but as a gift that life bequeaths us, a challenging viewpoint, but one that resonates with her experiences. Life, she points out, can be neither too short nor too long. It simply is, and it's up to us to value every moment. She urges people to hold fast to optimism, to harness confidence in the future, and to remember that difficulties and challenges are often transient, even if they can seem endless in the moment. Her take is that everyone has their own personal war to fight, and we rarely know what burdens others are carrying. Thus, kindness and sincerity, she believes, are essential if we hope to truly connect with one another. Later into her career, Pam Grier received multiple honors that underlined the respect she had accumulated from peers and educators alike. In 2011, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore awarded her an honorary doctorate of humane letters. That same year, Langston University recognized her with an honorary doctorate of science. For a woman who had once resorted to beauty pageants to raise money for college, the bestowal of these degrees was a remarkable testament to how far she had come. She further channeled her energies into philanthropic and educational ventures, launching the Pam Grier Community Garden and Education Center in partnership with the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum. The garden's mission was to teach organic gardening, promote nutrition, and generally educate visitors about healthier lifestyles. It was named after Pam in 2011, underscoring both her dedication to giving back and the institution's recognition of her star power as a means to draw attention to worthy causes. While many think of Pam Grier as an icon of 1970s cinema, her influence has extended far beyond that narrow temporal box. In the science fiction show Smallville, she appeared as the villainous Amanda Waller in a recurring role around 2010, introducing her to a younger demographic familiar with DC Comics lore and the teenage drama that Smallville was known for. She has also popped up sporadically in shows like Law & Order, Special Victims Unit, and other programs that have recognized that her fierce presence and strong acting chops can elevate any storyline. In addition, there has been talk of a film adaptation of her memoir, tentatively titled Pam, which might give viewers a dramatized window into the complexities of her personal journey. To understand what makes her story so resonant for so many, one has to look at the broader historical and cultural context that she journeyed through. When Pam Grier first arrived on the cinematic landscape, mainstream Hollywood was not known for celebrating black female leads, let alone ones portraying tough, gun-wielding vigilante types who took down criminals and corrupt officials with the same swagger that male action stars had been demonstrating for decades. It was also a time of social upheaval. The late 1960s and early 1970s saw the rise of the Black Power movement, more pointed critiques of systemic racism, and a call for new forms of cultural representation. The Blaxploitation films of that era were in many ways a direct response to the absence of black people on screen in meaningful roles, or at least an absence of roles that offered agency and unapologetic self-determination. Pam Grier emerged as a figure who could command the screen, not just because of her striking looks, but because she delivered characters who resonated with audience members hungry for role models, especially black women who rarely saw themselves reflected with any real agency in mainstream cinema. Coffy was a nurse turned vigilante, fiercely protective of her community and willing to risk her life to take on the dealers and pimps who were corrupting it. Foxy Brown was a similarly formidable figure, driven by loyalty and righteous fury, confronting the exploitation faced by those around her. Grier's portrayal of these women was not merely a matter of reading lines in a script. It seemed to draw on her own experiences of being bullied, objectified, and disregarded. By playing these characters with raw conviction, she delivered a sort of catharsis for others who might have felt voiceless. Even though critics of the blaxploitation genre argued that many of these films trafficked in hyperviolence, stereotypes, and sensationalism, Pam Grier's roles were distinctive in being images of black female empowerment. In a cinematic landscape that had, for much of Hollywood history, relegated black women to roles as maids, nannies, or comedic sidekicks, Grier's characters stood front and center, overshadowing everyone else in the frame. And that was what made her so revolutionary. The entire arc of her career, from those early AIP productions to her lauded collaboration with Quentin Tarantino, has been studded with breakthroughs that carry deeper implications about race and representation in the film industry. Yet amid the adoration and the career milestones, Pam's personal path was pockmarked by trials. We must circle back to the mysterious tropical disease she contracted in the Philippines, an illness whose severity could easily have ended her career, if not her life, when it left her temporarily blind and cost her all her hair. That alone would be scarring for anyone, but for an actress whose appearance is often under constant scrutiny, it posed an immense psychological and emotional test. The doctors, initially uncertain how to treat her, kept her under close surveillance, testing her relentlessly. She was quarantined, forced to withstand debilitating fevers and the torment of not knowing whether her sight would ever return. In her darkest moments, she might have despaired about whether she would ever again be able to deliver her lines on a set, stare down a camera, or even see her own reflection. Yet, in the end, it was her fighting spirit and some robust medical intervention that pulled her through. Shortly after her recovery from that disease, she faced another harsh blow when she was diagnosed with cancer in 1988. Many of her close friends and family members described this as a crisis that tested her faith, her fortitude, and her sense of purpose. She had to undergo treatment while continuing to navigate Hollywood, which can be notoriously unsupportive of actresses even under ideal conditions, let alone those who are combating severe health conditions. She confided to a few close friends that being given a terminal prognosis shifted her entire perception of life. Suddenly, every moment mattered. She realized that dwelling on negative aspects, be it professional rejection or personal heartbreak, was no longer an option. Instead, she poured her energy into cherishing the time she had left, devoting herself more fully to roles, to philanthropic endeavors, and to the people around her. That she defied the odds and remains with us today is a testament not only to the progress of medical science, but also to her personal determination. The question then arises, how did Pam Grier maintain her mental and emotional well-being through these storms? She has offered some insights in interviews pointing to spiritual and meditative practices she learned over the years, as well as support from close family and friends. She also credits her animals. She has often been vocal about her love for horses and dogs as sources of comfort and unconditional love. She found purpose in simpler joys, like working with the soil in her community garden project, or connecting with underprivileged youth who might have felt the same hopelessness she once endured. Through all these endeavors, she found that resilience is like a muscle. The more one uses it, the stronger it becomes. On a more personal note, her relationships with Richard Pryor and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar highlight the complexities of balancing personal intimacy with the demands of a public career. Richard Pryor was a comedic genius, but he also battled drug addiction and emotional volatility. Pam, having faced her own tribulations, stood by him for as long as possible, offering support and empathy. While their relationship ultimately did not endure, it was a passionate bond that left a lasting imprint on both their lives. With Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the tall, cerebral basketball star who had converted to Islam, Pam was exposed to another facet of African American culture and spirituality. Their relationship, though private in many respects, spoke volumes about the intersection of sports, entertainment, and the evolving concept of Black identity in the latter decades of the 20th century. From an industry perspective, Pam Grier's story is one of doors opening and closing. When Blaxploitation ended, many of the actors and actresses who thrived in that genre struggled to remain relevant. Some were typecast, others simply faded into obscurity. Grier, however, refused to be pigeonholed. She took roles that would deepen her craft, whether they were comedic guest spots on television or stage roles that showcased her dramatic chops. She embraced mainstream action films, such as Above the Law, 1988, with Steven Seagal, in which she memorably played the protagonist's partner. She made an impression in television arcs, whether in crime dramas or sitcoms, forging a steady presence that allowed her to outlast many of her contemporaries. Her comeback in the late 90s with Jackie Brown was thus not just a nostalgic nod to old fans, but a genuine reintroduction of an artist who had evolved over decades and come through the gauntlet of personal trials. Tarantino did not simply cast her in the film because he loved Foxy Brown. He saw that she had gravitas, comedic timing, emotional depth, and a cinematic weight that could anchor an entire film. The synergy between director and star was evident, as Jackie Brown stands as one of Tarantino's most soulful and character-driven works. In interviews around the time of Jackie Brown's release, Pam Grier appeared serene, poised, and deeply appreciative of the attention. It was as if, by surviving her darkest hours, she had discovered a renewed sense of purpose for her life and her art. Post-Jackie Brown, Pam Grier continued appearing in both television and film, including a memorable role in the 1996 Tim Burton-directed Mars Attacks, though that arrived just before Tarantino's film, but often gets attention when fans talk about her more eclectic roles. Later, as mentioned, she embraced the role of Kit Porter in The L Word, a series that broke a lot of ground in terms of LGBTQ representation on television. Portraying a heterosexual character in a primarily lesbian group of friends, Pam's presence in that ensemble reminded viewers of the intersectional nature of representation. Kit was a woman of color, an older woman among younger women, a sister grappling with how to emotionally support her sibling while facing her own personal battles. She was frequently depicted confronting her past addiction issues and her quest to stay relevant in an industry that can be unkind to older performers. In that sense, the role reflected Pam's real-world resilience and her openness to exploring new facets of life's complexities. In January 2018, Pam Grier revealed that a biopic based on her memoir was in the works, provisionally titled Pam. While details have sometimes been scarce, the mere idea of bringing her life story to the big screen was thrilling news for fans and those intrigued by how she navigated her collisions with adversity. The narrative would likely fuse her recollections of childhood, the bullying, the complicated racial dynamics in her community, her father's travels with the military, her family's sojourn in England, and her mother's influence as a nurse, with her earliest attempts to break into Hollywood, the rise and fall of Blaxploitation, her near-fatal illness, her relationships, her bouts with cancer, and her revival via Tarantino. More than just a highlight reel, the film would presumably offer the personal dimension of her experiences, her inner struggles, her heartbreak, and ultimately, her perseverance. Reflecting on her philanthropic work, Pam Grier's passion for organic gardening, health, and nutrition might strike some as unrelated to her glamorous film roles, but it actually forms a through line in her philosophy of healing and wholeness. The Pam Grier Community Garden and Education Center is meant to teach people, especially youth, how to care for the earth, how to care for their bodies, and how to find sustenance that is not just physical, but also spiritual. She has explained that working with the soil can be a kind of therapy, a grounding process that helps people connect to something beyond their immediate struggles. It is a project that resonates with her long-standing belief that adversity can be transformed into strength if addressed with patience, humility, and a readiness to learn. That strong sense of community responsibility has only deepened over the years. The museum that named its first garden in her honor in 2011, the National Multicultural Western Heritage Museum, recognized not just her star status, but also her commitment to exploring the West's multicultural legacy. Indeed, Pam's ancestry and her father's background in the Air Force instilled in her an understanding of how diverse identities shape American life. When she was a child living briefly in the United Kingdom and moving around various U.S. states, she absorbed the complexities of different cultures, races, and traditions, forging in her a deep sense of empathy that would later color her advocacy work. In interviews and public appearances, she has often returned to the subject of adversity, a topic that runs like a leitmotif through her entire life. She once said that adversity is something no one wants, but it comes to all of us, and it can be a gift if we choose to see it that way. Such a statement might feel counterintuitive, especially for those who feel overwhelmed by personal calamities. But Pam Grier has endured more misfortunes and heartbreaks than many: bullying, exploitation, life-threatening illness, the deaths of loved ones, professional setbacks, and still emerged with a sense of joy and gratitude. She encourages people to place faith in tomorrow, to realize that hardship is often temporary, and to remain kind to others because we seldom know the full extent of their battles. Her perspective on relationships echoes this theme. She points out that everyone in our lives is, in a sense, just passing through, and we must accept the limitations of how long we can journey alongside any one person. By recognizing this finiteness, we learn to cherish moments, refrain from taking people for granted, and hopefully extend compassion and empathy wherever possible. Such philosophies of living are not abstract for Pam. They are deeply rooted in her life story, lived experience, and the trials she has surmounted. As the decades roll on, Pam Grier's legacy continues to grow, influencing new generations of female action stars. Women like Halle Berry, who made history by becoming the first African-American woman to win the Best Actress Oscar, or Angela Bassett, whose regal strength on screen has inspired many. Each of them, in their own way, stands on the shoulders of women like Pam Grier, who dared to challenge the norms of what a leading woman of color could look and act like. And in the broader cultural arena, her story offers an object lesson in forging identity against the grain. She was a woman of mixed heritage in an era that often insisted on binary racial categories, a black actress in a predominantly white industry, and a female star in a genre largely dominated by male leads. Every step of her journey involved claiming space in an environment not always prepared to accommodate her. If one examines her roles beyond the headline-making films, there are countless minor appearances and cameo roles that reflect her willingness to lend her star power to a range of projects, from comedic stints in Martin or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to dramatic arcs in shows like Law & Order, SVU. She demonstrated that she wasn't locked into an ego-driven method of choosing roles. Instead, she recognized the importance of constantly refining her art, staying visible, and connecting with various audiences. Her philanthropic activities, particularly with regard to health, nutrition, and the environment, underscore her commitment to using her platform for more than just personal gain. At times, Hollywood stardom can be an isolating bubble, severing celebrities from the realities that everyday people face. Pam Grier, however, remained engaged, perhaps because of the hardships she endured or the empathy she gleaned from traveling in her childhood. She simply would not allow herself to drift too far from the communities and struggles that shaped her. That sense of rootedness has given her a distinct moral clarity throughout her career. Additionally, we cannot ignore her powerful voice in advocating for women's rights. Herself a survivor of abuse and sexism, Grier has talked candidly about the importance of bodily autonomy and respect for women's boundaries. She has praised the shift in Hollywood, albeit gradual, toward more robust narratives about women, narratives that reflect their complexities, their inner lives, and their power. She acknowledges that while progress has been made, there is still far to go, especially regarding the intersectional discrimination faced by Black women and other women of color. Yet, her own story stands as a beacon of what can be achieved with perseverance, courage, and an unyielding will to exist on one's own terms. Looking back, many fans and film historians see Pam Grier's career as a testament to survival of the short-lived but iconic Blaxploitation era, survival of Hollywood's cyclical nature, survival in the face of severe medical crises, survival of heartbreak and loss. She has not simply survived, though. She has actively shaped the cultural landscape, from forging iconic roles to forming philanthropic ventures, from championing intersectional narratives to demonstrating that a woman could be as tough as any male hero on screen. In many ways, her life underscores the idea that each chapter of adversity also created new opportunities for growth or reinvention. The bullying in her youth spurred her to stand up for herself and embrace the power of her unique heritage. The uncertainties of traveling as an Air Force child gave her the adaptability to handle sudden shifts in professional trajectory. Contracting a life-threatening disease in the Philippines taught her about the fragility and preciousness of life. Being nearly blinded for a month underscored how quickly everything can be taken away. Surviving cancer with a grim prognosis proved that the human spirit can triumph even when the odds are stacked steeply against it. Loving deeply and losing taught her empathy and compassion that she channels into her activism. And the cyclical transitions in Hollywood roles, from Blaxploitation queen to supporting character actress to revered comeback star, showed her and us that personal branding does not define one's essence. Her statement that adversity is actually a gift resonates through every facet of this life story. It might seem paradoxical, especially coming from someone who has been through so much, but she believes adversity can hone qualities of resilience, empathy, and humility. She calls on everyone to acknowledge that we are passers-by in each other's lives, never truly knowing the depths of another's suffering, but always capable of extending kindness. And kindness, she seems to insist, is not weakness. It is a form of strength that binds communities together, just as her on-screen personas often protected their neighborhoods, their loved ones, or their own dignity from oppressive forces. As for that mysterious illness that threatened to strip her of her livelihood and her joy, she overcame it through medical intervention, a determination not to yield, and a powerful sense of faith in both herself and the possibility of healing. It is impossible to say whether that experience might have later helped her face cancer with a similar determination, but it does not seem coincidental that someone who stared down mortality at such a young age could find the wherewithal to do so again. By the time Pam Grier was receiving honorary doctorates, launching community gardens, and starring in new television projects, she had become something of an elder stateswoman in Hollywood. Someone who had earned respect not merely for past achievements, but for her ongoing ability to adapt and inspire. Younger actresses began to reference her as a source of motivation, and the film industry that once relegated her to genre pictures now looked upon her with reverence. Directors, including women and people of color, found in her a guiding example of how to persist in an industry that can be uncompromising. It's fair to say that Pam Grier, as an artist and as a person, has lived multiple lifetimes worth of experiences. One might try to distill her appeal into a single trait: courage, strength, compassion, or authenticity, but the essence of her life is more than the sum of such attributes. She has always been a shapeshifter, adapting to the times without losing the essence of who she is. She showed that women can be action stars, that African American actresses can headline films and draw audiences, that a painful childhood does not have to define the rest of one's life, and that even life-threatening illnesses can be met with unflagging willpower. For those who wish to see more of her story, the possibility of the biopic, Pam offers a hopeful promise. Meanwhile, her existing body of work is a rich tapestry that captures the American cultural evolution from the late 1960s onward. Whether you know her as the brazen vigilante from Coffy, the cunning flight attendant from Jackie Brown, or the multifaceted Kit Porter from The L Word, you're encountering different aspects of the same indomitable woman. And if you stumble across her cameo in Snoop Dogg's Doggy Dog World, or watch her comedic appearances on Martin or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you see her willingness to surprise audiences time and again. The final takeaway from her story is perhaps best summarized in her own words about adversity. She instructs us to appreciate life's temporal nature, to maintain hope, to remain kind, and to understand that everyone we meet is battling forces we might never fully comprehend. This worldview, cultivated through a lifetime of challenges, lies at the core of who Pam Grier is, a beacon of strength, a survivor who has never let the ravages of time, the cruelty of prejudice, the heartbreak of loss, or the looming shadow of illness undermine her spirit. Her narrative stands as a call to all of us to press on even when darkness closes in, to stand tall in our truth, and, when we can, to offer help to others who find themselves in the lonely trenches of adversity. While the plot arcs of her famous cinematic characters might have ended with the villain vanquished or the criminal element purged, Pam Grier's real-life story remains ongoing, shaped by each new challenge and each new opportunity to give back. From her earliest days performing in stage productions in Denver to raise college funds, to working the switchboard at American International Pictures, to becoming a 1970s icon, to battling multiple serious health conditions and returning triumphantly with Tarantino, she embodies the phrase leading lady in every sense. She led the way for Black women in action films. She led by example in her personal philanthropic endeavors. She led with resilience, with kindness, and with an unbreakable sense of self-worth. If there is anything to learn from her, it's that real power is not found in physical prowess alone, but in the depth of one's compassion, the breadth of one's endurance, and the courage to face life's darkest moments with unwavering resolve. And so as we return to that gripping image of Pam Grier at her peak, struck down by a bewildering illness that robbed her of her hair, swelled her body, and stole her sight, we now know that it was far from the end of her story. She overcame that affliction just as she later beat cancer and countless other challenges that life set in her path. Her choice to see adversity as a gift has become a defining principle that resonates with audiences worldwide, whether they know her from Foxy Brown, Jackie Brown, or simply admire her philanthropic commitments. To watch her on screen today is to witness not just an actress, but a woman whose real-life heroism infuses every role with a spark of authenticity. It's a spark that has lit up Hollywood for decades and continues to do so. So if you're curious to learn more about how Pam Grier survived it all, the simplest answer is that she faced adversity head-on, refusing to let it swallow her dreams. And by doing so, She became an icon of resilience whose story inspires us to hold on a bit longer, to fight a bit harder, and to believe that even the most crushing circumstances can, with hope and tenacity, become the seeds of a triumphant new chapter.